I spent 22 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. Ask me anything. What are other inmates' attitudes towards you claiming your innocence while locked up? Ricky here. I think most inmates don't really care, but since they are mostly guilty, they probably assume everybody else is. As for me, most people knew my case from news media and gave me a favorable response and showed support, especially when I was being released. Sean here. There are people who are bitter about being locked up, and there are others who see potential exonerations as opportunities to snitch to get a deal so they can get out. We did have that problem in Ricky's case, and every other case where the inmates see media that indicates a fellow prisoner is about to go free. It adds to the burden of the work. Were you at least financially compensated for the state's mistake? I know there is no price you can put on freedom, but you should get something. However, Kid will get nothing for the time he spent in prison. That's because his wrongful conviction took place in Missouri and people only get compensation if their conviction is overturned due to DNA. DNA is not why a judge freed Kid. Ricky, when the state offers no compensation, we are essentially on our own. We have to find our own way, and so for me it has been trying to promote my book Vivid Expressions, available on Amazon. I'm now trying to speak for a fee to share my story and try to keep an income stream coming. Ultimately I hope to become a playwright and filmmaker. Sean, the only way for a non-DNA exoneree to get compensated in Missouri is to find a bad actor who is not immune from lawsuit, hire a lawyer and sue. Success is rare. Most get nothing. Wait, seriously? The man was locked up for 2 decades and the state is just saying oops, on you go? With no compensation for ruining an innocent man's life? America never stops to baffle me. That is literally fucked. If an engineer is wrong, and a building collapsed, suddenly they blame it on the engineer or their firm. If a doctor makes an error, it's malpractice and the doctor or the hospital gets sued. A judge makes a mistake. Whoops, bad, fuck you, mate, you get shit. Goddamn. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. There is no accountability for police, prosecutors or judges. This is why they behave the way they do. They operate like the mob, one hand washes the other. They are the mob. What do you think of all the changes that have occurred for the past 22 years, i.e. technology, cars, fashion, architecture, etc.? Had a guy that did 16 years I became friends with after he got out, and it was an adjustment for him for sure. Had to help him reintegrate back into society. I'm just curious how others see it as well. Ricky, I love GPS. I love hotel keycards. I love self-checkout at the store. I love Apple products. I love Uber and Lyft. So I have no complaints. My comprehension is pretty strong, so I haven't done bad in these areas. But for where I do fall short, my youngest daughter often comes to the rescue. What was the first meal you ate when released? Ricky, steak. Filet mignon. Fries, onion rings and a cold one at Fiorello's Jack Stack Barbecue with 30 friends and family, and they comped the whole tab. Can you shed any light on how things as obvious as a rock-solid alibi and knowledge of the crime didn't matter through the trial process? Sean, one of the problems with an overworked public defender is that your case goes to the bottom of the pile, and it doesn't get seriously worked up until a week or 2 before trial. So alibi witnesses get the same cross-examination by the prosecutor. When were you first contacted about this case? 2 weeks ago. So in March of 1997, you expect us to believe that you remember where you were and who you were with on February 6, 1997? It's the truth. So where were you on February 5, 1996? I don't remember. Where were you on February 6, 1996? I don't remember. Ricky got desperate and started calling his own alibi witnesses from the jail. That cross-examination goes like this. Who first contacted you about this alibi? Ricky. So the defendant asked you to say he was with you? Yes. There is no good way to answer these questions. Possible video surveillance evidence was lost. Memories were not as trustworthy. Fresh investigation is essential for a credible alibi defense. With an overburdened public defender system, Missouri prosecutions are alibi-proof. How did this experience affect your philosophy of life? Did it affect you religiously? If so, how? Did you find a way to make prison meaningful? If so, how? Ricky, my wrongful conviction did impact me religiously. I grew in my faith and had to become anchored in something or I would have blew away. God was and continue to be my anchor. As for did I find a way to make prison meaningful? Sure. I began living outside of myself. I focused on living vicariously through others. I created prison programs, I trained dogs, I wrote books and plays and movie scripts. I studied the issues of injustice and now I'm putting all that into play. That's beautiful. I'm glad you found peace and strength despite the injustice done to you. Why is the appeal process so lengthy? I've seen quite a few cases that the person was clearly innocent but it still took like 10 years or more to get the person out of prison, like in your situation. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. Do you think the appeal process will improve? Sean, I teach a 3-credit-hour advanced law school course in post-conviction remedies that still doesn't come close to answering this question. In a nutshell, procedural technicalities. You hear about criminals getting off on technicalities. That is rare. What is more common is that prisoners lose appeals because they have inadequate public defenders. The procedures are complex, and it takes money to hire the lawyers and acquire the resources to get justice. The appeals process has 10 steps, but you only get an appointed lawyer on the first 2 steps, and if a mistake is made at any step in the way, it creates a hurdle that prevents you from moving forward to the next. The Supreme Court studied the problem in 1989, and the report said the main cause of delays in the justice system is lack of access to competent counsel. Hey Ricky. Did knowing that you're imprisoned for something you didn't do help or hurt you in coping with the situation? Was it something to hold on to, or did it make things feel worse because of how unfair it is? Ricky, both. On one hand, it was agonizing to know that an innocent person is in a place built for the guilty. On the other hand, I was not guilty, and so I never behaved or acted as such. Nor did I ever give in, as I suspect most guilty people probably do after they're caught. I imagine they exhale, thinking in their mind, okay, I'm caught, I can rest now. But for me, it was, okay, I'm innocent, there's no time to rest now. I must live to see another day and hope for the day where I can live again, free. Is there anything about spending the time in jail that you find positive? Do you have any special lessons or insights you could share that a person that's never had your experience gain otherwise? Ricky, absolutely. When you slow down long enough, when any of us take a time out, there's something to be said about the discovery process. Life is no longer moving fast. It's slow. And time, despite being wrongfully convicted, becomes your friend. I've read over 1,000 books. I've written over a dozen complete writing projects. I became certified as a dog trainer. I have a homemade degree in business, from the prison library. And I developed a deeper appreciation for things people often fail to appreciate. I think that's a pretty positive takeaway. As for the lessons people can learn, don't waste the day with self-doubt or second-guessing yourself. Tell somebody you love them before it's too late. Eat with a fork before it's taken away. Put your bare feet on grass or carpet. Take a bath. And remember to laugh, I am. Have you forgiven those who put you behind bars? I imagine it wouldn't be an easy thing to do given you lost 22 years of your life. All the best for your new life outside. Ricky, I don't think they need to be forgiven. I think they need to be fired and disbarred. As for me being bitter, I'm not. I've made a conscious decision to be better, certainly better than they ever were to me or to whoever else they wrongfully sent to prison. What is one thing about daily life in the prison system you feel should change? Ricky, mandatory rehabilitation. Programs exist in prison but they're not really forced upon you, then they let men go back into society and force their shortcomings on society. Even being innocent, I took full advantage of every program opportunity, being conscious of the fact that I didn't want to be a burden to my family or society, provided I was successful on appeal. I've learned that all people in prison are not bad people. They've just made bad choices, often from a place of lack of knowledge or growth. What were some things about prison life that surprised you? What was something that you never got used to? Ricky, one of the things that surprised me about prison is the callous environment, where humanity is stripped away and everybody seems to give it permission. Often I felt like I was of a small circle who still had, rather held onto my humanity. One of the things I have fully embraced since I've been home is a world where humanity is okay again. As for what I never got used to, and what I hope to one day forget, is the dehumanizing aspect of prison. The times when we're strip-searched, forced to bend over, cough, and squat, and if they didn't like that you didn't bend over far enough or cough hard enough, they'd make you do it again. I heard you speak at William Jill College and thought your story was incredible. Did any of the officers, guards, judges etc. ever give you a genuine apology? Also, coming from a guy who has lived in Kansas City his whole life, what is your favorite KC barbecue? Ricky, first of all, Thank you for finding my story interesting and important. As for an apology from guards or any others, I did not receive one. However, as it relates to the judge, his order releasing me served as an apology good enough. As for the barbecue, I'm still in a rediscovering process. What about the prosecutor and judge? They are the culprits. Until there is accountability in law enforcement and the courts, they will continue to behave as if they are untouchable. That is one of the most unjust things that exist in our society. The people with the most power are immune from prosecution. No one will take a position of a DA/judge if the law made them liable, punishable by jail for mistakes they make. I'm not saying the system is fair, but our expectations should be more realistic. Do you see any reasonable changes that can be made to the legal process to stop these mistakes? So to either prevent them completely, or to help them get recognized and fixed much more quickly. Not Sean, obviously, but I think this might be one of the few problems that can be solved by throwing money at it. More pay for public defenders makes it a job more attorneys will want to do, rather than taking a job at a fancy law firm, and likely burning out, but that's another issue. I know a bunch of public defenders. If you didn't know any better, you'd think they were working 2 jobs flipping burgers based on their lack of personal wealth and their deteriorating morale. More money for more public defenders will lighten each one's caseload, allowing them to give each client more time and attention that justice demands they receive. Would you say the moral of this story is pay for a lawyer even if you can't afford it at the time? This is awful, I'm sorry this happened to you. Sean, most Americans will tell you justice costs money. A solid defense on a case this serious would be well beyond the reach of most middle-class Americans. I keep track of my time and expenses in exoneration efforts, and if I were billing my client for my time, my typical fee would be upwards of $500,000. A homicide defense will run you well into 6 figures. This is why public defender funding is so important. It's like being diagnosed with cancer, your life will depend on the cure, but it doesn't come cheap. As someone once falsely accused of a crime and facing 12 years in prison, I went to trial and I have some advice for people. You gotta start acting and thinking like you're guilty. Ask yourself, if I was guilty and trying to get away with this, what would I do? When you're innocent, you think that your innocence means something. It doesn't. Discount it and move on. 2. Get the best lawyer you cannot afford. Borrow from anyone and everyone. I borrowed $120K for my trial. Had to work my ass off to pay people back, but it was worth every cent. Edit. Another mindset to use is to remember it's not a justice system. It's a legal system. So get the best damn team you can. Because you're in a legal game, not a justice game. Know what game you're playing before you step on the floor. 3. Never ever talk to the cops. Retain your right for silence. It's the greatest gift you have. The cops don't want to sort anything out, they aren't on your side. They want to nail you. That's all they care about. They have a job to do. That job is to find someone to blame for this problem. So they're gonna do that. Don't help them do that. Save your ammunition for trial. My jury ended up laughing at the prosecutor and the investigating officer in the trial. I was acquitted of 13 charges in under 70 minutes by my jury. If I had have used a public defender, I would be in prison still, with another 6 years to go. Hopefully this advice helps someone else. Hit me up if you're in trouble with the law and just want an ear to listen. P.S. If you're guilty, I got nothing for you, no idea how to help you. Subscribe for more amazing stories. I said subscribe now. Otherwise this will open the door and eat you when you are asleep.